All right. Diving deep today into kingdom living.
Interesting.
What's it even mean for someone like you, especially, being a young person?
Right.
We've got this piece by Reverend Jonboh Godlove Joseph.
Oh, yeah.
Really digs into Matthew, how it paints a picture of a very specific, way of life.
It's interesting, this piece, it doesn't just stay up in the clouds.
Right.
It gets down to, how do you actually live out your faith day to day?
So it's not just about believing the right things, it's about what you do.
Exactly. And he uses this really cool analogy.
Okay.
Salt.
So, interesting.
He starts with this scientific fact, literally every cell in your body needs salt to survive.
Wait, so no salt, no life? I mean, what's that got to do with being a Christian?
That's the hook.
Yeah.
He uses that biological truth as a springboard. Christians are called the salt of the earth. And so if salt's essential for life, Christians should be too, right? They're meant to make a difference in the world around them, to be that preserving, cleansing, even sometimes destructive force, just like salt.
So imagine social media, right? Could you be the salt in that crazy digital world? Preserving what's good, pushing back against all the negativity?
That's a great application.
Yeah.
It's about, recognizing that even in that vast online space,
Right.
your actions can have an impact.
Right.
Choosing to be kind, to stand up for what you believe in, to offer hope instead of hate. I mean, those are all ways of being salt.
Instead of just scrolling past all the bad stuff, you're actually doing something about it.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the piece also talks about being the light on a hill.
Right.
But then it says a light hidden under a bowl is useless.
Right.
What's the point there? Don't hide your faith.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about visibility, about not being ashamed of what you believe.
Okay.
But it goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
The piece also calls out hypocrisy.
Right.
It's you can't claim to be a light if your actions don't back it up.
Right.
You can't preach kindness
Yeah.
and then, be a jerk to the cashier at the store.
Right.
Your life has to reflect the light you're claiming to carry.
Not hiding under a bushel basket. Right.
Right.
Gotta walk the walk.
I gotta walk the walk.
But it's not all, these huge dramatic displays of faith, is it? How can someone be a light in those, everyday moments?
Yeah, you're right. It's not about being, on a stage all the time.
Right.
It's about those, small, consistent acts of kindness and integrity.
Okay.
Think about a single candle in a dark room.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a spotlight to make a difference. A smile, a helping hand. Speaking up for someone being treated unfairly, those are all ways of letting your light shine.
Okay, now the piece doesn't shy away from the tougher stuff either.
Yeah.
It gets real about overcoming lust and immorality, which, let's be honest, it's a struggle, especially for young people.
It's something that needs to be, addressed openly and honestly.
For sure.
And the piece offers some practical, strategies for resisting those temptations.
Okay.
One of the key things that it emphasizes is this idea of making a covenant with your eyes.
Covenant with your eye. Okay, that sounds very biblical.
Right.
What does that actually look like in the real world?
Yeah.
Especially with all the images and videos we're bombarded with constantly.
It's about being intentional with what you allow yourself to see. Those accounts on social media that always seem to make you feel worse about yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's time to unfollow them.
Right.
Or maybe you realize that, watching certain movies or TV shows tends to trigger thoughts that you don't want to be dwelling on. So it's about recognizing what those triggers are.
Right.
And making a conscious effort to avoid them.
So it's not about being naive, or living in a bubble.
Right.
It's about taking control of your media diet.
Yeah, exactly.
Choosing to focus on things that are actually good for your mind and soul.
Exactly. It's about setting boundaries.
Okay.
And making choices that align with the kind of person you want to be. The piece also emphasizes this idea that no temptation is above God.
Right.
That can sound a little abstract.
Yeah.
But I think it's a powerful message of hope.
Right, because sometimes it feels like you're fighting a losing battle.
Right.
These temptations are just too strong to resist. So how does that offer practical help?
It's a reminder that you're not alone in this struggle.
Right.
God understands the temptations you face.
Okay.
And he's not just sitting back and watching you flounder,
Yeah.
He's actively working to provide a way out, a way to resist.
So it's about tapping into that strength, that power.
That's greater than ourselves, rather than relying solely on willpower.
Exactly. It might mean, reaching out to a trusted friend or mentor for support when you're struggling.
Right.
Or finding healthy ways to channel your energy and emotions. It might even mean literally removing yourself from situations or environments that you know are going to be triggering.
Right.
The piece talks about running from things that trigger lust. And sometimes, that's the most practical and effective thing you can do.
Yeah, and I think that's something a lot of people can relate to, especially young people. It's like, you know what your weaknesses are, you know what gets you into trouble.
Yeah.
So why keep putting yourself in those situations?
Right. Exactly.
Now, speaking of battling internal struggles, the Source also tackles something we all face.
Right.
The challenge of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mess around. It says forgiveness is non-negotiable for this kingdom life.
Right.
But forgiveness is tough.
Especially when someone's really hurt you.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Forgiveness can be one of the hardest things we're ever asked to do.
Right.
But the Source is very clear. It's not optional.
Right.
It's foundational for this, way of life.
And the piece explains this by looking at how God forgives us. And it's not a one-time deal. It's ongoing.
Right.
It's like God keeps forgiving us as we forgive others.
Exactly.
That's pretty profound.
It is. It's a powerful concept.
Yeah.
It's recognizing that we can't receive God's grace and mercy if we're not willing to extend that same grace and mercy to others.
Yeah.
It's a two-way street.
Right.
And to really drive home the point, the Source uses the most extreme example imaginable.
Yeah.
Jesus on the cross, forgiving the very people who were killing him.
Wow.
It's like a gut punch, forcing you to confront your own capacity for forgiveness.
Right.
If he could forgive at that moment.
Yeah.
What does that say about our ability to forgive those who've hurt us?
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot to unpack.
It is.
But the Source doesn't just tell us to forgive and leave it at that. It also talks about a bunch of other key things that go hand in hand with this kingdom living idea, like giving, for example.
Yeah.
And it's not just about money, which is what we usually think of first, right?
Right. The Source expands on this concept of generosity.
Okay.
Saying it's about giving your time, your talents, your resources, anything you have to offer that can make a positive impact.
So it's about looking at your life and asking, how can I use what I have to make the world a better place?
Exactly.
It could be volunteering, mentoring someone, just being a good listener to a friend who's going through a tough time.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that everyone has something valuable to contribute.
Right.
True generosity goes way beyond just writing a check.
Now, the Source also links prayer and fasting to spiritual strength.
Yeah.
I've always been intrigued by fasting. It seems so counterintuitive in our culture of, instant gratification.
Right.
What's your take on it?
Well, fasting is this, this ancient practice found in lots of different religions and spiritual traditions.
Right.
And it usually involves abstaining from food or certain types of food for a set period of time.
Okay.
And it's often seen as a way to deepen your connection with God, to clear your mind and focus on your, spiritual life.
So it's not about punishing yourself,
right,
or being, super strict.
Right, exactly.
It's about creating space for deeper connection and reflection.
Right, and the Source connects it to spiritual strength, because when you intentionally deny yourself those, those physical comforts, it helps you develop discipline, humility, and reliance on God.
It's about shifting your focus from the external to the internal.
Exactly.
From material things to spiritual things.
Okay.
It's like hitting the reset button on your spiritual life.
I like that.
And it ties in with another point the Source makes, seeking God first. It's about making your relationship with God the top priority in your life.
Exactly. And that leads right into the importance of self-examination, which the Source also emphasizes.
Right.
You can't really know what God wants for you or where you need to grow if you're not taking time to reflect on your own, thoughts, motivations, and actions.
So you need that self-awareness to grow spiritually. You have to be honest with yourself about your strengths and weaknesses and be open to God's guidance and correction.
Right.
Okay, so to sum all this up,
living
this kingdom life the Source talks about, it isn't about some far-off, impossible ideal. It's about the choices we make every single day. The little acts of kindness, courage, and integrity that we weave into our life.
It's about making your actions line up with your beliefs, even when it's hard, even when the world is pulling you in a different direction. It's about being salt and light, about forgiving and being generous, and about always seeking God's guidance.
It's a journey, not a destination. We'll trip up, we'll make mistakes. But we keep moving forward, keep trying to live in a way that reflects God's kingdom.
Absolutely.
And it's not like, you have to become this totally different person, right? Like overnight.
Right. Yeah. It's about those little shifts in perspective, those moments where you choose to react differently than you might have before.
Yeah.
Maybe you bite your tongue instead of snapping back at someone, or you offer to help even when you're, tired and don't really feel like it.
So it's less about like grand gestures and more about those everyday interactions, those little choices that add up over time.
Precisely. Think about it like building a muscle.
Okay.
You don't, get ripped by lifting a huge weight once.
Right.
It's about consistency.
Right.
Showing up, day after day.
And making their small but intentional efforts.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So if our listeners out there thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but where do I even start? What's one concrete thing they could focus on this week?
Well, remember that analogy of the light hidden under a bowl?
Right.
Maybe this week is about, letting your light shine a little brighter.
Okay.
So what's one way you could do that?
Maybe it's speaking up about something you believe in, even if it feels a little scary.
Right.
Or maybe it's simply making a conscious effort to be more patient with the people around you.
It could even be something as simple as, smiling at a stranger, offering a genuine compliment to someone who needs it.
Right.
Remember those small acts of kindness.
Right.
They can have a ripple effect. It's like that quote, be the change you wish to see in the world, right? You don't have to wait for someone else to, make things better. You can start right where you are, the people around you.
And that's a really empowering message, isn't it?
It is.
It means that each of us has the potential to make a positive impact, no matter how small it might seem at the time.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive into this whole idea of kingdom living.
Yeah, it has.
We've covered a lot of ground, from being salt and light to forgiving others, giving generously. And I hope our listener, feels inspired to continue exploring what this looks like in their own life.
Absolutely. There's so much richness and depth to this concept. And I think, the source we discussed today provides a wonderful framework for understanding and applying these principles.
So to our listener, keep digging into Matthew. Keep wrestling with these ideas. See how they challenge and inspire you on your own journey of faith.
Yeah, remember, it's a lifelong process.
It is.
A journey of growth and discovery. So embrace the journey and don't be afraid to, stumble along the way.
Right. None of us have it all figured out.
None of us do, that's for sure.
It's about taking those small steps, those intentional choices day after day.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.